Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Justin always thought of himself as a lucky man. At 29, he had what seemed like a solid marriage, a comfortable routine, and a life that, while not extraordinary, was stable and predictable. Isabella, his 27-year-old wife, was charismatic and sociable, always friendly with neighbors and acquaintances. They lived in a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other at least by sight. Their routine was simple. Justin left early for work and came back in the late afternoon, while Isabella took care of the house and had her own commitments during the day. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing suggested anything was wrong, until that Saturday morning. It was a sunny day, and Justin had decided to tend to the garden. He was watering the plants in front of the house when Emma, the 12-year-old daughter of the neighbors next door, showed up at the fence. Emma was a talkative girl, the kind who loved chatting about anything and everything. Justin had always been patient with her, willingly answering her questions. That day, Emma was excited, talking about school, a science project, and the new dog her family was thinking of adopting. Justin listened with moderate attention, nodding at the right moments, until Emma casually dropped, utterly unaware of the weight of her words, "Isabella's boyfriend is really handsome. He's got this amazing red car, just like in the movies." Justin felt as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. For a moment, the world around him fell silent. He stopped watering the plants and looked at Emma, trying to process what he'd just heard. The girl went on cheerfully, blissfully unaware of the impact of her words. "I see him pulling up every Tuesday morning, always right after you leave. I figured he must be her boyfriend because they seem really close, you know. He stays here for a long time." Justin forced a smile and asked, trying to keep his voice casual, "Are you sure it was here, Emma? Sometimes people mix up the houses." Emma shook her head emphatically. "I'm sure. It's definitely here. He parks right out front, and Isabella opens the door all smiley. He really is good-looking." She laughed as if sharing a harmless little gossip. Justin thanked her, said he needed to finish watering the plants, and waved goodbye. As soon as Emma walked away, he dropped the hose and went inside, his heart pounding wildly. Isabella was in the kitchen, making lunch and softly humming a tune. She turned when she heard him come in and smiled. "All done outside?" Justin nodded, trying to appear normal, but his mind was racing. Could it be possible? Was Isabella cheating on him? The idea seemed absurd, yet the certainty in Emma's voice was unsettling. For the rest of the day, Justin watched Isabella discreetly, searching for signs, anything that might confirm or disprove what he'd heard. But she behaved completely normally. She chatted with him about everyday topics, laughed at silly jokes, made dinner. Everything was exactly as it had always been. Still, doubt had taken root like an invisible thorn. That night, when Isabella announced she was going to take a long bath to relax, Justin saw his chance. He waited until he heard the shower running, then, his hands slightly trembling, picked up her phone from the dresser where it was charging. He knew the password. They'd never had secrets from each other, or at least that's what Justin had always believed. He unlocked the device and started searching. First text messages, then WhatsApp, checking every conversation, including archived ones. He moved on to Instagram, reviewing direct messages. Facebook Messenger, Telegram, personal emails. He even opened the photo gallery, looking for something, anything suspicious. 20 minutes passed. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No compromising messages, no unknown numbers, no strange photos. All conversations were trivial, messages to friends, exchanges about grocery shopping, silly memes. Justin felt a mix of relief and confusion. Maybe Emma really had gotten it wrong. Maybe it was a relative of Isabella's he didn't know, or an old friend. Maybe it was all just a big misunderstanding. He put the phone back exactly as he'd found it and lay down on the bed, trying to calm his thoughts. But the doubt wouldn't leave him alone. What if Isabella had been deleting messages? What if she used another phone? What if Emma really had seen something? Tuesdays. Why specifically Tuesdays? Justin spent a sleepless night, his mind spinning in circles. On Monday, he made a decision. He needed to know the truth, even if it meant facing the worst. He spoke with a coworker and arranged an excuse to leave work early the following Tuesday. He said he had an important doctor's appointment. His coworker didn't ask questions. Tuesday arrived, and Justin followed his usual morning routine. He had coffee, got dressed, kissed Isabella goodbye, she returned the gesture with a casual smile, and left the house at his usual time. But instead of heading to work, he drove just 3 blocks away and parked in a spot where he had a discreet view of his own house. He turned off the engine and waited, his heart pounding hard in his chest. Minutes dragged by like hours. Justin checked the car's clock every few seconds. 9 o'clock. 9:10. 9:15. He started thinking maybe there was nothing after all, that he was wasting his time, that he should just go to work and forget this whole paranoid mess. But then, precisely at 9:20 a.m., a sleek red sports car turned the corner and parked right in front of his house. Justin's stomach turned. A young man stepped out of the car. He was handsome, Justin had to admit it, tall, athletic, dressed in expensive casual clothes. He looked no older than 23 or 24. The guy glanced quickly around, as if checking whether anyone was watching, then rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately. Isabella appeared, dressed casually but put together, her hair loose, light makeup on. She gave the young man a wide, radiant smile, the kind Justin hadn't seen directed at him in months, maybe years. They chatted briefly at the doorstep, laughing at something, and then the guy stepped inside. Isabella looked quickly up and down the street before closing the door behind them. Justin sat frozen in the car. Part of him wanted to burst out and storm into the house right then and there, but another part, the rational part that was still functioning, told him to wait. He needed to be absolutely sure what was going on. Maybe it really was just a friend. Maybe they were only talking. But deep down, Justin already knew the truth. He could feel it weighing on his chest like a stone. 15 minutes passed. Every second was torture. Justin gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Anger began replacing the initial shock, not just anger at her, but at himself for being so naive, so trusting, so blind. Finally, at the 20-minute mark, he decided he couldn't wait any longer. He got out of the car, closed the door softly, and crossed the street with determined steps. He used his key to open the front door, turning the lock as quietly as possible. The house was silent except for a faint sound coming from the living room, muffled laughter, whispers. Justin walked down the hallway, each step measured and controlled, though his heart was racing. He stopped at the living room entrance and looked in. What he saw shattered any hope he might have still held on to. Isabella and the young man were on the couch, the very couch where Justin used to watch TV, the couch they'd bought together 2 years earlier. They were tangled up, kissing intensely. The guy's hands were on her waist, sliding up her back. Her hands were in his hair, pulling him closer. They were so absorbed in each other they didn't notice Justin's presence until he said, in a controlled voice heavy with cold fury, "I hope you two are having fun." The effect was instantaneous. They sprang apart as if electrocuted. Isabella brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with pure terror. Her face literally went pale. The young man, Charles, Justin would learn his name later, also turned ashen, trying to stand up and stumbling over his own legs. He looked at Justin, then at Isabella, then back at Justin, clearly trying to process what was happening. Justin took 2 steps toward Charles, and the young man instinctively backed away. Justin's voice was low, deliberate, each word loaded with contained threat. "You have exactly 5 seconds to get out of my house before I do something we'll both regret." 5. 4. 3. Charles didn't wait for 2. He grabbed his car keys from the coffee table and literally ran for the door, slamming it so hard against the wall it echoed. Seconds later, the sound of his car speeding away echoed down the street, probably waking neighbors who were still asleep. Justin then slowly turned to Isabella, who stood frozen on the couch, trembling, tears already streaming down her face. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice breaking into a whisper. "Justin, I can explain, this isn't what you think. We were just..." He raised his hand, cutting her off. "No. You're not going to explain anything because there's nothing to explain. I saw it. With my own eyes." Isabella began sobbing louder, trying to get up from the couch. "Please, just let me talk, it was the first time, I swear. I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing." Justin interrupted her again, his voice still low but as unyielding as steel. "You're going upstairs right now, packing your things, and getting out of my house. I don't want to hear excuses, I don't want justifications, I don't want to hear a single word from you." Isabella stood up, swaying slightly, tears flowing freely. "Justin, please, don't do this. We can talk. We can work this out. I love you." This was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Her voice grew higher, turning frantic. "You have 10 minutes, Justin said, pointing toward the stairs. "Pack your things and leave. Don't make me repeat myself." Isabella saw from his expression that there was no room for negotiation. She walked up the stairs weeping, stumbling on the steps, and Justin followed her, stopping at the bedroom door. He watched coldly and distantly as she threw clothes into 2 large suitcases, still sobbing uncontrollably. She kept trying to speak through her tears. "Please, Justin, forgive me. I don't know what came over me. It was so stupid. I love you so much. We can get past this, please." Justin didn't respond. He just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for her to finish. When the suitcases were full, though disorganized, with clothes spilling out the sides, he gestured toward the door. Isabella walked down the stairs dragging the suitcases, each step accompanied by loud sobs. At the front door, she turned one last time, her face swollen from crying, eyes red and desperate. "Justin, where will I go? What do I do now?" He opened the door fully and said, without a trace of emotion in his voice, "To your mother's house. To his house. To wherever you want. I don't care. But it won't be here." Isabella stood there for a few more seconds, as if still hoping he'd change his mind, tell her it was all a nightmare, that they could talk. But Justin simply held the door open, waiting. Finally, she picked up the suitcases and walked out, crying loudly, dragging them down the sidewalk while some neighbors, including Emma and her mother, watched discreetly from their windows. Justin closed the door gently and leaned against it, finally allowing himself to feel the full, overwhelming pain of what he'd just witnessed. But there was no time to sink into despair. He needed to act fast. The next day, still in shock but determined, Justin consulted a divorce attorney. He sat in the lawyer's office and recounted the entire story, from Emma's comment to the scene on the couch to Isabella's expulsion. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, listened carefully, occasionally taking notes. When Justin finished, the lawyer asked the crucial question, "Do you have any evidence? Photos of the incident? Recordings? Messages between her and the other man?" Justin shook his head. "I searched her phone before. There was nothing. She must have deleted everything. But I saw it with my own eyes. I caught them on the couch. Isn't that enough?" The lawyer sighed, his expression growing darker. "In court, your word against hers may not be enough, especially if she denies everything. Could you get a statement from the other man? Or from the neighbor who first told you?" Justin tried. Over the following days, through research and conversations with acquaintances, he discovered that Charles worked as a personal trainer at a gym. Justin tried contacting him by phone, by message, even went to the gym in person. But Charles had blocked all communication channels from Justin, and according to his co-workers, he'd abruptly quit his job and moved to another city without leaving a forwarding address. He'd simply vanished. As for Emma, when Justin delicately approached her parents, explaining that he'd need the girl's testimony for the divorce proceedings, they flatly refused. They said they weren't going to involve their 12-year-old daughter in an adult scandal, and made it very clear they wouldn't allow her to testify in court. Justin understood, they were good neighbors, just protecting their child, but that left him without witnesses. The divorce proceedings officially began. Isabella hired a lawyer, and her response came days later. She vehemently denied any infidelity. She claimed Charles was just an old friend going through a difficult personal time and that she'd been offering emotional support. She alleged that Justin had verbally abused her and kicked her out of the house without justification, acting on irrational jealousy and paranoia. Her lawyer portrayed Justin as a controlling, possessive, and emotionally unstable husband. Justin was shocked when he read the documents. It was as if they were talking about someone else, another marriage, another reality. But it came down to his word against hers. And without concrete evidence, the case turned into exactly that, he said, she said, dispute. Months dragged on. Hearings, paperwork, depositions. Isabella cried in court, telling a story of a difficult marriage in which she felt emotionally neglected, claiming Justin had controlled and isolated her. Her lawyer was good, very good. He made it seem like Justin had overreacted violently to an entirely innocent situation. The judge, a tired-looking man who'd probably seen hundreds of similar cases, listened to both sides. Without material proof of infidelity, no photos, no videos, no messages, no willing witnesses, he couldn't legally accept the affair as a proven fact. He ordered an equal division of assets, as required by law. The house had to be sold, and the proceeds were split evenly. Justin was furious, feeling betrayed not just by his wife but now by the legal system as well. But the worst was yet to come. Through her lawyer, Isabella requested spousal support. She claimed she'd sacrificed career opportunities and professional development to manage the household and support Justin's ambitions, and that she now found herself in financial vulnerability without adequate means to support herself. She submitted documents showing her income was significantly lower than Justin's. Justin's lawyer argued against it, but the law was clear. The judge, considering the income disparity and claims of economic dependence during the marriage, granted the request. Justin would have to pay monthly alimony to Isabella until she became professionally stable again, which could take years. There was no set end date. Justin left the courthouse completely stunned. He sat in the back of the taxi taking him home. He didn't trust himself to drive at that moment, and felt a rage so deep he could barely breathe. He'd personally caught his wife cheating. He'd confronted the other man and thrown him out of his house. He'd exposed the infidelity and ended the marriage immediately. And yet, he was being financially punished. He'd have to pay, month after month, the woman who'd betrayed him. The injustice was suffocating, unbearable. In the months that followed, Justin had to rebuild his life from scratch. He rented a small apartment in a more modest neighborhood, sold the car he loved and bought a cheaper used one, cut expenses to the bone. And every single month, without fail, he deposited alimony into Isabella's account. Each payment was a fresh stab, a constant reminder that the system didn't care about the truth he'd witnessed. 2 years passed since the divorce. Justin had, with great effort, started to rebuild his life. He'd been in therapy, focused on his job, slowly returned to socializing. He was still paying alimony monthly, each deposit hurting a little less than the one before, but still hurting. It was through mutual acquaintances that Justin learned Isabella was in a serious relationship with a successful businessman. Over the following months, he began noticing something that caught his attention: Isabella's social media accounts, once discreet, were now filled with ostentatious posts. Photos at expensive restaurants with fancy dishes and imported wines. Trips to paradise destinations, Caribbean beaches, luxury resorts in Europe, 5-star hotels. She appeared wearing designer clothes, brand-name handbags, expensive jewelry. In one post, she stood on a yacht, champagne flute in hand, beaming. In another, she posed in front of an imported car with the caption, "New gift." And all the while, she continued receiving his alimony every month. Justin felt his old anger return with full force. She was living like a celebrity partly at his expense, pretending in court that she still needed financial support. He decided to act. He began systematically documenting everything. He took screenshots of every post, saved each photo with date and time stamps. He compiled a complete dossier showing a clear pattern of luxury living, dozens of dinners at upscale restaurants, at least 6 international trips in a year, expensive gifts, designer clothing, all meticulously organized and dated. Armed with the dossier, Justin scheduled an urgent meeting with his lawyer. He laid the printed evidence on the table, showing trip after trip, restaurant after restaurant, purchase after purchase. She claimed financial vulnerability in court, but look at this, Justin said, pointing to the photos. This isn't the life of someone who needs alimony. The lawyer examined the material carefully, a slow smile forming on his face. This is exactly what we needed, substantial change in circumstances. She clearly isn't in need anymore. He immediately began preparing a motion for judicial review, attaching all the collected evidence. The motion was filed with the court. When Isabella was notified, she panicked. She quickly tried to delete her social media posts, but it was too late. Justin had everything documented and time-stamped. Her lawyer argued the photos were old, that she'd merely been visiting her boyfriend, that they didn't reflect her financial reality. But the evidence was overwhelming and recent. The judge, reviewing the photographic dossier, was visibly displeased. At the hearing, Isabella showed up dressed modestly, trying to appear humble, but the contrast with the photos she herself had posted was glaring. The judge leafed through the submitted materials and asked directly, "Ms. Isabella, are these your social media accounts?" She nervously confirmed they were. "And these trips, to the Bahamas, Paris, Dubai, were they taken in the past 12 months?" She tried explaining they were gifts, but the judge cut her off. "Alimony was granted based on your claim of financial vulnerability and inability to maintain a basic standard of living. Clearly, that doesn't reflect your current situation." The ruling came 3 weeks later. The judge granted Justin's motion and terminated alimony immediately. He further ruled that Isabella had no right to retroactive payments or compensation. The justification was clear: she'd benefited financially while living a luxurious lifestyle, which constituted an improper exploitation of the court order. Justin walked out of the courthouse feeling something he hadn't experienced in years: justice. Finally, after all that time paying for a betrayal he'd witnessed firsthand, after financially supporting the woman who'd cheated on him, the cycle was over. It wasn't a complete victory, he'd never recover the money already paid or the years of bitterness, but it was closure. Isabella would now have to live entirely on her new partner's support or her own resources, with no more help from him. In the months that followed, Justin noticed Isabella's flashy social media posts had completely stopped. Her accounts went private, then silent. Through acquaintances, he learned her relationship with the businessman had ended shortly after the alimony was cancelled. Apparently, he wasn't so interested once he realized she no longer had that guaranteed extra income. Isabella had gone back to working full-time in a position well below what she'd held before her marriage. Justin, on the other hand, finally began breathing easy financially. Free from the monthly alimony burden, he was able to save, invest, and truly rebuild. 2.5 years after the alimony was cancelled, he was in a healthy relationship with someone who genuinely valued him, had bought his own apartment, and was authentically happy. The lesson Justin learned was bitter but valuable: justice isn't always immediate, but persistence and documentation can eventually bring balance. And it had all started with a 12-year-old girl who, innocently, mentioned that his wife's boyfriend was very handsome, a revelation that, while initially painful, ultimately freed him from a life built on lies. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.